The Apache got a bride no one wanted in a piece. The desert wind carried stories, whispers of vengeance, and the restless sighs of those who had lost too much. Among the Mescalero Apache, the name of Chief Dawson carried weight. He was a man who had seen too many winters and buried too many suns. For years, he had fought the encroaching settlers who cut down their forests, poisoned their rivers, and built houses where sacred stones once stood. The Apache were proud, fierce, and loyal to their traditions, but years of battle had thinned their numbers. So when a messenger from the settlers' fort came under a white flag, offering peace, it stirred both hope and suspicion. Peace had been spoken of before, and each time it came with betrayal. Yet this time, the settlers came not only with words but with gifts: food, blankets, tools, and a promise sealed by marriage. The settlers' leader, Captain Morgan, proposed that his daughter marry into the Apache tribe to unite the two peoples. The words sounded noble, but everyone could see the deeper truth. The settlers wanted safety for their caravans and farms, and the Apache wanted freedom from starvation. Dawson, wise in the ways of men, knew this was not an alliance of hearts but of survival. Still, the Council of Elders decided to accept the offer. They said that peace, even one born of necessity, was better than endless blood. The woman, though, was not desired. Her name was Eleanor Morgan, a pale, quiet woman known for her stubborn silence and her scarred face, a mark she had received years ago in a fire that had taken her mother's life. When the treaty was signed beneath the cottonwood trees, the settlers' eyes avoided her, and even the Apache murmured uneasily. No one wanted to marry her. She stood apart, thin and solemn, clutching the hem of her dress as though to keep herself from falling apart. Then Dawson's son, Taza, stepped forward. He was tall, proud, with the fire of his father in his eyes. The others whispered that he should not be the one to take her, that the union would bring shame. But Taza looked at her and saw not her scars but her courage, the way she stood amid two hostile peoples, her chin lifted despite the scorn. "I will take her," he said, his voice steady. "If peace is to be born, let it be through me." The murmurs grew louder, but no one challenged him. The union was made that evening in a quiet ceremony. Eleanor was wrapped in a blanket of red and brown, and Taza placed a turquoise necklace around her neck, a symbol of trust among his people. The Apache danced around the fire, though the joy was forced. Eleanor sat beside Taza, unsure of the rhythm, unsure of the language, unsure of her place. The first weeks were heavy with silence. Eleanor lived in a small lodge near the edge of the village. She tried to help with the daily chores, but the Apache women eyed her warily. When she spoke, her accent sounded harsh to their ears, and when she stayed quiet, they called her ghost. Children followed her, laughing, pointing to her scars. She tried to smile, but the loneliness pressed down like a stone. Taza visited her each evening, bringing food or small gifts: rabbit meat, woven bracelets, smooth stones from the river. He spoke little, but his eyes were kind. Slowly, she began to understand his gestures, his patience. She started learning the Apache words: water, fire, sun, heart. She burned her tongue the first time she cooked cornmeal the Apache way, and Taza laughed softly, showing her how to do it properly. Seasons changed. The desert bloomed for a short while, painting the land with wildflowers. Eleanor began to walk farther each day, learning the paths, the scents of the sage, the calls of the hawks. The women still kept their distance, but one of them, an old healer named Kinta, began to teach her how to grind herbs and make poultices. Eleanor learned quickly, and soon, when one of the children fell sick, she helped Kinta tend to them. Peace held between the settlers and the Apache for nearly a year. But peace, like a fragile clay pot, can crack with the smallest blow. A group of young settlers, drunk and angry, killed an Apache boy who had wandered near their land. When word reached the village, fury erupted. Taza wanted vengeance, but Eleanor begged him to wait. She rode with him to the fort, her heart pounding, her words trembling as she spoke to her father. Captain Morgan was ashamed but afraid that if he punished his men, more violence would follow. Eleanor stood before him and said, "You gave me to them for peace. If you cannot keep your promise, then my life has been for nothing." Her words struck like arrows. Morgan ordered the guilty men to be handed over to the Apache. It was an act no settler had dared before, but it saved countless lives. The Apache respected this justice, and though grief still hung in the air, the bloodshed was avoided. From that day, the people began to see Eleanor differently. She was no longer the unwanted bride, she was the bridge between two worlds. As the years passed, the wounds of the past began to heal. Children with brown skin and light eyes ran through the desert, laughing. The settlers and the Apache began to trade more freely, horses for grain, silver for cloth. Eleanor, now called White Leaf by the Apache, became known for her healing hands and her courage. But peace never lives without shadows. Raiders from another tribe attacked the village one night while Taza was away hunting. Fires burned, arrows flew, and chaos consumed the camp. Eleanor fought to save the children, pulling them into her lodge. She was struck by an arrow but did not fall. When Taza returned at dawn, he found her collapsed by the fire pit, clutching a small boy she had protected. She lived only long enough to see him kneel beside her. Her lips moved, whispering in Apache, "Peace is not given. It is made." Then she was gone. The whole village mourned her. Even the settlers came to lay flowers at her grave beneath the cottonwood tree where the treaty had been signed. For the first time, both peoples stood together without weapons. Years later, when travelers passed through the desert, they heard tales of the white woman who brought peace to the Apache. Some said she had been a saint, others a fool, but those who truly knew her said she had been something rarer, a woman who saw beyond fear and pride. Taza never took another wife. He ruled with quiet strength, always remembering her words. When children asked about the scarred woman in the stories, he would smile and say, "She was the fire that taught us warmth does not come without pain." And so, the unwanted bride became the heart of a legend. The peace she forged lasted longer than anyone expected, not perfect, not eternal, but real enough to give two peoples a future. Long after both tribes and settlers had vanished into history, the cottonwood still stood by the river, its roots drinking from the same earth that had once seen blood and love mingled together. The wind that whispered through its leaves carried her name, Eleanor Whiteleaf, the woman who was given for peace and became its keeper. She had arrived as a symbol of a deal, a name on parchment, a woman no one wanted. But when she left this world, she had given both nations something more lasting than treaties, the memory of shared humanity. The Apache elders would later tell their children that true peace was not written in ink or sealed with gifts. It was written in the choices of the heart. And the story of the unwanted bride was retold around countless fires, not as a tale of pity, but of strength, the story of how a single scarred woman taught warriors and soldiers alike that courage can come dressed in gentleness.